Are you afraid of going completely mad? Think about it, because this video will discuss a place where madness became the new norm, a place that ignored the laws of the country within its borders, and about its leader, a pastor whose natural charisma compelled parents to abandon their deeply loved children. Recall Charles Manson and imagine someone 100 times more dangerous. We will delve into the grim history of Colonia Dignidad, which the media dubbed the Colony of the Damned. After learning about it, ask yourself again, are you afraid of going mad, or are you afraid that if you found yourself in such a place, you would be the only one in your right mind? For the first few years after its establishment, the global community was unaware of the colony's existence. In fact, outsiders were indifferent to it. This was primarily because, from the outside, it appeared as if an idyllic life reigned within its walls. A year after settlement in 1962, Colonia Dignidad officially became recognized as a charitable organization. Located in central Chile, it boasted a farm, a bakery, and even a state hospital where the local population received free treatment, all with the blessing of the Chilean authorities. Even the name was chosen to project as positive an external image as possible, Colonia Dignidad, or Colony of Dignity when translated from Spanish. The settlement's leader promised his followers a God-fearing life in the Promised Land. In return, they were to provide humanitarian aid to the poor rural population. This all took place under the slogans of God, labor, discipline. To outsiders, the corruption-free facade seemed impeccable. However, questions about why the colony was established in Chile instead of the leader's homeland quickly peeled away the veneer, revealing the darkest part of his biography. It's time to meet the founder of this hell on earth hidden from prying eyes. Born in Germany on December 4, 1921, he lost an eye under unclear circumstances, with a fight with a peer being the most commonly cited reason. Initially joining the Hitler Youth, Schäfer could not directly enlist in the Wehrmacht due to his eye injury. Instead, he was sent as a medic to the Western Front. He himself claimed that his glass eye was the result of a battle injury. For a while, Paul served as a doctor in a Nazi field hospital in occupied France, eventually reaching the rank of corporal before laying down his arms. This convoluted career path helped Schäfer become an expert in the use of drugs and tranquilizers, a skill he would later exploit as the head of the colony. After such a tumultuous youth, the former Nazi paramedic seemed eager to whitewash his reputation. In 1954, he founded a private social mission that, on paper, was dedicated to charity. However, when it came to the actual situation, Schäfer's teachings echoed those of the American preacher William Branham, who gained rapid fame after the war. Branham's ideas ranged from the notion that a woman's duty was to submit to her husband, to predictions of an apocalypse in which Los Angeles would be submerged. As strange as it might seem, the one-eyed Nazi didn't come across as a cartoonish villain to his followers. Instead, they admired him, followed him, and listened to his speeches with rapt attention. 1956 was a turning point for Schäfer. Near his hometown in Siegburg, Germany, he established a boarding school for children whose parents were members of his religious community. These parents obediently handed over their offspring and worked for the sect for free, unaware of what was actually happening behind the closed doors of the boarding school. What occurred there was truly horrific. I haven't yet mentioned a key detail in Schäfer's biography that preceded both the creation of the boarding school and the establishment of the colony. Shortly after World War II, Schäfer was hired by an evangelical organization caring for orphans. In 1952, he was expelled from it following allegations of sexual abuse against several children. Now, after everything that had happened, he had unrestricted access to the boarding school students and almost complete control over the minds of their parents, providing him carte blanche to pursue his vile intentions. However, even in a small town, such crimes couldn't remain hidden forever. Information leaked to the police, and by the late 1950s, a criminal case was initiated against Paul Schäfer on suspicion of child molestation. Connections with influential individuals established through the colony shielded him for a while. He used this time to search for a safer haven for his sect, a place where no one would come to his followers' aid, even if they heard their pleas. After several years of searching, in 1961, Paul Schäfer crossed the Atlantic Ocean and arrived in Chile, followed by about 230 people. This was facilitated by Arturo Maschka, the Chilean ambassador to Germany, who helped Schäfer's followers gain refugee status and ensured full legal support. On September 21, 1961, Schäfer, along with his loyal associate Hermann Schmidt, purchased an abandoned farm in Vadara, covering approximately 3,000 hectares. This marked the beginning of a mysterious history, passed down as rumours, a place many entered but few exited. From day one, Schäfer, or Eternal Uncle as he was called within the colony, ordered the perimeter to be fenced. He remembered the impact of publicity in his homeland and decided to completely isolate his little kingdom. In the early years, complete autonomy was but a dream. Nevertheless, an informational dome was successfully erected around the colony, and for a time, no news came from it. This silence was broken only in 1966 by the first escapee, Wolfgang Müller. By then, draconian measures had been implemented within Dignidad to maintain order, including importing video cameras, microphones, and motion sensors from Germany, all placed around the perimeter to minimize escape chances. Wolfgang's successful escape, though on his second attempt, the first thwarted by the Chilean police who caught and returned him, leading to his torture, would later be confirmed by many escapees who spoke of the horrors within. One former resident, Werner Schmidtke, described the terrifying details. It was a very large room, and each of us lay on our bed with something like a wall or partition between each bed. In the center of the room stood a very, very bright lamp. The men were in the center, so they could see each of us, though we couldn't see who was there. There was only a very thin sheet on the beds, and there was gas heating. To this day, I can't stand the smell of gas. They gave us beeswax to put in our ears when we lay in bed. Then they would blindfold us with a towel, and our hands were placed by the sides of our legs as if we were lying in a box. A few minutes later, another man arrived. I remember him well. He still lives in the colony. He pulled down our pants and left us naked, instilling fear in us as our hearts pounded rapidly. Despite the wax in our ears, we heard another boy's loud scream, a sound of intense agony. I later found out why when it was my turn with the electric cattle prod they had brought from Germany, designed for livestock but used on us, targeting the softer parts of the body, the head, and then the genitals. When someone screamed, they were immediately taken away. If you couldn't resist and screamed, they took you somewhere unknown, and as we discovered, it was better to resist because not doing so resulted in even more brutal treatment. There was another room with a bath and toilets. I remember there was another man there. I know his name, but he has since passed away. This man was the chief torturer. Imagine being stripped naked and placed in a bathtub filled with ice-cold water in the winter. They would dunk your head under water, making you feel a shock so intense you were certain you wouldn't survive. Werner arrived at the colony when he was just 2 years old, a common story for many children who ended up there. They were brought in at a very young age and then isolated from their parents. Families were divided into groups by age and gender, and children were taken from their mothers at birth. All adults were to be called uncles and aunts. This disconnection and prohibition on communication, even among people living in the same group, allowed for total control over all residents of the villa. The most monstrous aspect of Schäfer's mind games was making people forget the ongoing madness. His service as a nurse gave him enough knowledge to drug people to achieve the effects he desired without killing them or driving them insane. Many colonists reported that every morning they went to the local pharmacy where they were given medication. Gudrun Müller, the wife of the first escapee, spoke about the effects of such therapy. I only noticed some things here and there. Whenever I mentioned seeing something wrong, I was severely beaten and forced to take lots of medication. I was shocked with electricity, which caused me to lose my memory, and this went on for years. I only found out later that I had been subjected to electric shock therapy, as told by others. That's why I wanted to ask the doctor himself what it was and what they did to me. Why was I tortured? I notice the effects even now. I have massive memory loss, but not enough to forget everything. I remember enough to come forward and finally tell the public what happened in that place. Incredible events unfolded there, and here's what we aim to clarify, which is why we are discussing it now. Müller's escape did damage to the eternal uncle, albeit not fatally. For a while, as things calmed down, Schäfer was forced to flee to Argentina. Meanwhile, his followers began compiling personal files on guests from the Chilean elite. Many succumbed to their depraved desires when offered sexual encounters with boys and girls in the colony. These acts were photographed, and the evidence was used to blackmail officials, helping to shield the colony from police scrutiny for many years. Thanks to these influential supporters, Müller's case was dismissed, and Schäfer was freed from all charges, allowing the colony to continue its operations with impunity until the 1970s. When Salvador Allende was elected president, he began efforts to shut down the colony. Consequently, the colonists started actively supporting Allende's opposition, particularly Patria y Libertad, a right-wing paramilitary group fighting against Allende's followers. Many militants from this group were trained within the colony's walls, and much of their weaponry was smuggled through the villa's territory. Additionally, Dignidad became a site for detaining and executing Chilean political prisoners after Pinochet's armed takeover in 1973. However, fortune could not favor Paul Schäfer forever. After years, the dictatorship in Chile collapsed, diminishing the colony's influence and making it a target for journalists and law enforcement. A significant contribution to the search for Schäfer was made by an investigative journalist who had been monitoring his case since 1966 and helped locate the Eternal Uncle's hideout in Argentina. She described the pursuit as follows: "We found a van registered to Peter Schmidt, known to be close to Schäfer in the colony and who disappeared with him in 1996. The van was registered to an address in Chevelco, which turned out to be a motorcycle rental owned by an Italian. When I spoke to him, I disguised myself as a German tourist to avoid suspicion. This man led the Corolla team to a cheese factory potentially connected to the fugitive Messiah. That night, we followed Schäfer's accomplices through the dark, winding roads, marked the location, and returned the next day to discover La Solita, which, as we found out a year later, was where Schäfer had been hiding. One of our journalists infiltrated the site and met with neighbors, but no one spoke until a local, known in Argentina as Felipe, hinted that an elderly man had lived among them. This elderly man had battle scars and was ill. These clues led us to believe we were on the right track. In March 2005, the nightmare that seemed eternal came to an end when its mastermind was finally arrested and extradited to Chile. On April 24, 2010, Schäfer died of a heart attack in his Santiago prison cell. The colony still exists, but now anyone can leave, though some remain unprepared for life beyond its confines. Now known as Villa Baviera, this ill-fated place has become a magnet for tourists. Perhaps these buildings will long serve as a reminder of the consequences of unchecked power in the hands of a madman. Let the past remain in the past.